So I watched episode 14 last night, and in an episode that seems to have so much revelatory and surprising stuff coming at you thick and fast, this, I've got to say, is the first episode where I've started to get really worried about the show. There's 4 hours left of this show now, and I've got a problem with some of the stuff that we've just had. We get some exposition about the very first Blue Rose case, Lois Duffy in 1975, and that confirms what we all have been thinking for years about the significance of the Blue Rose. It's something that doesn't occur in nature. Then Gordon's Monica Bellucci dream straight after that, which seems at first like whimsy but links back into the Philip Jeffries scene from Fire Walk With Me and really just underlines the notion of well, who do you think this is here that he says, and it seems unnecessary. It seems so specific, all of this. David, we're already there. Some underlining is being done to things that struck me as so obvious that I'm wondering if intellectually we've all been ridiculously overreaching with regard to how this is all going to culminate. What really got me worried and thinking along this track, I don't mind some reiteration, just some underlining, but when we get a scene as specific and outlandish as Freddy's super glove, his power glove, and the giant, now we're calling him the fireman, giving him such specific instructions when he's always been elusive and a little zen right from series 1 with his dealings with Cooper, to then give him a fucking gardening glove that gives him the power of a pile driver hand and then specifically tells him to go to Twin Peaks to fulfill his destiny. I start getting a little worried. It's just so fucking hokey. So I suppose at some point in time, Freddy's going to have something to punch or someone to arm wrestle or something to smash that's going to prove the key to everything. Are we really happy with someone so vital seemingly to the outcome of all of this just suddenly rocking up in episode 14 of series 3 and then resolving something by having a really strong hand? At least that scene gave us a little bit more time with James, which was really nice, and James is presumably now going to find the source of the ringing at the Great Northern. Gordon Cole's Monica Bellucci dream and all of that. The dreamer dreams the dream and then lives within the dream, but who is the dreamer? Let's remember that Gordon is having a dream about Cooper's dream about Philip Jeffries, that both Cole and Albert had forgotten the whole Jeffries experience. Could that whole section in Fire Walk With Me with Philip Jeffries be a dream? Could it be a dream decades after the chronology of the Fire Walk With Me movie? Did Philip Jeffries ever exist? I'll tell you what's got me really worried. It's the big Sarah Palmer reveal. Sarah Palmer, her face-off moment, her Nicolas Cage face-off experiment moment. Clearly it's mirroring, we've seen Laura in the Red Room take her face off when she's got the gold glowy light behind her, and we know that the gold glowy Laura orb was sent by the fireman back to Earth, or initially to Earth. And now Sarah Palmer seems to be her opposite number, possessed perhaps by the experiment, what some people are calling the mother or the mother of abominations, but that's taken from a reference in the Secret History of Twin Peaks. I'm going to call it the experiment because that's what it's credited as in the TV show. It certainly makes you think about that line from a couple of episodes earlier where Sarah Palmer screamed, "Something happened to me," and we just assume that that was all of the fucked up shit that has happened to her and her family. But maybe it was more recent than that. Did you notice when she pulled her face off, some of the montage in the vortex there, one of the images was of a left hand, of the experiment's left hand, and this finger was huge and black and seemingly infected. This is the finger, by the way, that when remember when Gordon Cole was talking to Tamara about I'm very, very happy to see you again, old friend, and it was that finger, the spiritual path, which is also the finger that the jade ring gets put on. It's the finger that Bob put the letters under the fingernails to with this ring, I thee wed. Despite Grace Zabriskie being absolutely fucking phenomenal, and phenomenal again in this episode, I'm now seriously worried that she'll turn out to be the little girl that had the frog hop or the frog moth go down her throat. And if all of this is going to retcon what she and her family went through in the first series, well, before the first series, and in Fire Walk With Me, and if Sarah is now going to somehow be implicated way before even the birth of Laura, and somehow by association culpable, I'm really uncomfortable with that. The story told after the fact in series 1 and the last 7 days of Laura Palmer's life in Fire Walk With Me, of an abusive and controlling father and husband who molests his daughter. It treaded such a fine line between not completely letting Leland off the hook, but adding to the metaphysical, the mythology, the spiritualism of the show. What Bob is and was never particularly nailed down. So Leland was never completely let off the hook, but at the same time was perhaps never completely 100% guilty of his crimes. It was such a delicate balancing act, and the story there of cycles of violence and violence against women, which is, for better or worse, at the heart of Twin Peaks. If we're now going to reconfigure all of that and somehow make Sarah culpable, I'm deeply, deeply uncomfortable with that, and that's my main worry coming out of this episode. Now, it might be that Sarah has, the experiment smashed out of the box in episode 1, so Sarah might only be recently possessed, but I'm worrying about that little girl with the frog moth in her throat, and I'm worried about the implications for Sarah and what has historically happened to her and her family, and done to her and to her family. She's an abuse victim as well. If this somehow makes her guilty, I'm just deeply, deeply, deeply uneasy about that prospect. But there's a piece missing called Billy. My theory, do you remember when Hawk went to visit Sarah and there was a noise out in the kitchen? I think that was Billy. Here's my theory, for what Twin Peaks theories are worth. I think Sarah, the experiment, took a chunk out of his cheek and he really ran for it. And I think, and I'm not the only one, that the guy in the cells with Chad, with the cheek that wouldn't stop bleeding, is Billy. And we know that Audrey had a dream that Billy was bleeding from his face, and we have the story at the end from Tina's daughter that Billy was bleeding from the face, and this links in Tina with the Audrey story, and that we've got 4 episodes to go now, and Billy seems to be a really fucking integral part of this, and we've only got 4 episodes left. It's a sign of how much I care about this show that I'm now starting to really worry that it's not going to stick the landing. What is good, and there's still a ton of good, we finally get the trip to Jack Rabbit's palace, and that is everything I wanted it to be. What do you make of Nido turning up? That was completely unexpected. Also, on the wonderful side of the spectrum is Andy going to the White Lodge. Of course it's Andy. Of course it's going to be Andy, pure-hearted Andy. It's what were the keys? Someone remind me, what were the keys to the lodges? Was it love and fear? Andy is love all the way. He's one of the purest souls in the show. Part of Andy's vision from the fireman seems to have a future scene in it. There's a very specific shot of Andy manoeuvring Lucy into place and pointing out something to her that hasn't happened yet. If that is Billy in the cells at the end with Chad and Nido, what are we to make of his dialogue, echoing the last things everyone else says, like Cooper does in Guise of Dougie at the moment? If his dialogue is such an echo of Dougie Coop, why did he remind me more of the Woodsman? And the monkey sounds that he makes recall what Philip Jeffries said in Fire Walk with Me about the meeting place above the convenience store and the monkey behind the mask. So there are little threads here that tell me just to keep my powder dry and have faith, because there are two scenes here at the start and at the end of the episode, both of which refer to a very specific scene in A Fire Walk with Me, the Philip Jeffries scene. One is very overt with characters saying, this is that bit in that film when this happened, and we see those clips. And another one is much more subtle, but still looping us back round to that scene. So I'm hoping that there's something of much greater subtlety going on here than Freddy having to punch someone at some specific time at some point. Much more importantly, obviously, what are we to make of the Rancho Rosso logo at the start of the show changing colour? It started with a red circle, I noticed it green, this episode it's black. What the hell's all that about? I don't know. Go to Reddit. I'm sure there are thousands of Reddit threads about what the hell that's possibly about. I can't be 100% entirely down on an episode that has the hands down funniest moment of the show so far. And this is a series that I have laughed out loud at more times than I can count, more times than I can recall now. Twin Peaks Season 3, Twin Peaks The Return, is fucking hilarious. And to date, the most hilarious thing I've ever fucking seen in this show is the Las Vegas FBI office. And Wilson, how many times have I told you this is what we do at the FBI? 4 episodes to go. Oh my